Welcome to episode 4 of Design to Last. Are we doing this now?
We are. You're on the podcast with
Dino
and
Wait, you
Ashley.
never let me prepare for it.
No, it has to be impromptu.
I think it's great.
All right.
We are on episode 4 of Design to Last, and we are in a brand new setup.
We are.
We had our editor come over, and he gave us some pointers and tips, like speak into the mic more.
That's helpful, isn't it?
He's like, I can't hear you. Also, the camera's way too close to your face, Dino and Ashley. Nobody wants to see up your nose, see all your boogers.
Well, no, the other thing is this.
Oh, yeah. We hung the gallery wall behind us. We closed the bedroom door.
Yep. We have new chairs, so I'm less slouchy and more vertical.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, I continue to talk away from the mic.
That sounds better. We have coffee now, too. Listen, we just got the whole setup.
You get to hear me sip on coffee.
So we wanted to kind of just jump off of where we last finished off with... What topic were we on?
The last one we talked about was talking specifically about trying to remove sin from your marriage. And we were talking predominantly about my side, the man's side of it, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's obviously really important. And I do want to touch on one or two other things. I still think that there's an argument for ensuring that the only visual and physical sexual outlet that you have in your life is your wife. And the main reason why is that I feel very strongly that if you only have a single outlet, the one outlet that is your wife, for any of your sexual needs and desires or anything like that, you have a significantly higher quality of overall experience.
Yeah.
That's my.
I think that goes both ways, more specifically for men, but also for women, you know?
Yeah. I think for women, and I'm speaking.
Yes, tell us what you think, Dino.
Tell me, this is what women think.
What do women think?
Women don't do it. Men are visual creatures, and we all gravitate towards that sin of like looking visually in lustful ways. And that so quickly dilutes your relationship with your spouse and ultimately gets in the way. Like it just, the way that our brains have been structured and created, it's set up so that if you deviate outside of it, it just messes up the way your brain functions with your spouse. But on a woman's side, it's obviously women are less visual. There are some that are that way, but I'd say less in general. But you are more relational, and I think you have a higher
emotional.
Yeah, you have a higher predisposition to allowing outside emotional relationships to circumvent.
Like if you and I aren't doing well, or like in an argument or something, or we're just in a funk of some sorts.
Yeah.
And then, I am talking with a coworker and they're listening to me and they hear me more, I feel like that's where women kind of fall into losing the control of their thoughts and their words and their actions towards their husbands, because now they have like something kind of appealing that we don't even realize we're actually doing it, you know?
Because you're looking for gratification you're looking for that relationship that you and I should have to be fulfilled. And because it's you in the same way that a man would visually dilute his wife, a woman will emotionally dilute.
Yeah. And then you know what that roots and builds up? Resentment.
Yes.
Because it's like, well, Jerry always listens to me.
Yeah.
And Jerry,
Yeah.
Jerry's the other guy.
Yeah. But
Frank?
What?
Frank?
The fake names you come up with are always the best.
It's Jimmy, Susie, Tommy, and Billy.
Those
are the fake names. Those are the ones my mom taught me from the 50s.
As soon as the story starts off with,
Timmy.
I was hanging out with Johnny or Timmy, it's like, wait, this isn't real. This isn't, even if you've actually done that before where you're like, yeah, I was hanging out with Susie. I'm like, stop. Yeah. This is not a real
fake story.
Is this a dream or what are we talking? This is a terrible analogy and I'm probably going to get flack for it. But the way that I always look at this is if you're going to do drugs, and dopamine is ultimately a drug that you get as a chemical release by fooling around with your girl. If you're going to do drugs, don't dilute it. Don't ever stay with the good stuff. I want intimacy with her and I want to ensure that nothing else is getting involved with that. But just my sinful nature makes it very, you have a predisposition to looking at other things and stuff like that. And I just want to encourage you, men, when you go and do that, you dilute what you actually have.
That's scientifically.
It's science. Exactly.
Aren't you a doctor?
Science.
No, but
Guys.
seriously though.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So besides just like the biblical side of thing and all that, it's scientifically you're just like putting yourself in a better position.
Absolutely. The way that, I mean, if we're going to actually get into the brain chemistry on this, and I am no chemist, I basically just dabble around with a whole bunch of like, you know, Huberman type guys on YouTube, and I watch a whole bunch of their stuff. Dopamine in general must be associated with some sort of effort. Like all these brain studies that have been done on men who are into pornography and things like that, and what that does to your brain. And because there's no effort associated with that, like lustful desire and things like that, that visual activity, your brain actually consumes the hormone, like the dopamine differently. They have like brain scans of men that have been like heavy into, it's something like heroin and pornography addictions, and the brain scans look the same, right? So having a sexual outlet in an unhealthy way messes up your brain chemistry.
Right.
It's not something you want to ever mess with. Like stay as far away from it as possible. If you take a car and drive it through a field in the same exact spots over and over and over, eventually you get these ruts that run through it, and it becomes very easy to then ride down those ruts. And it becomes very difficult to then do anything outside of those ruts. It's the same way it works in your brain. You run neural pathways over and over and over, and you strengthen those pathways. But eventually, if you stop driving down those pathways and shift and do other things, then yes, your brain can recover, right? Like your brain is an amazing thing, and God's given us an amazing ability to have, you know, even grace in our brains and how it works. That is a uphill battle, right? If you need help in that area, go get help from your buddies. The Bible talks about how iron sharpens iron, and you should go and confess your sins one to another. Like go confess your sins to a brother, somebody that you know is going to be somebody that can help you to get out of it. Don't do this stuff alone. That's stupid.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And
So.
I mean, God's grace too is so big. Like it doesn't, but there should be no shame in that,
No.
you know?
No. If I've kind of like exposed some of the underbelly of like the man side of it, and like the importance of trying to shift over, what would you say as the sins of a woman? Like,
well,
what?
It's interesting you asked me this question, because when we were talking about it, not on the podcast, I did have to think about it for a second. After we finished the last one, I thought to myself, all right, you know, I did chime in when on the last one on the things, the same sort of sexual things, because women do have those same temptations as well, and issues, I guess. But then I was like thinking about it a little bit deeper, and some of the things in my life that I've seen that have caused some sort of friction between you and I, and like a lot, I guess it's allowed that it's sin to creep in. It's something that we don't want in our marriage.
Yep.
And so I was just thinking about, you know, the temptation of, you know, materialism and, you know, wanting, having a desire to just want to consume things all the time and want to consume material items, and how that, I mean, that's been a division between you and I over the years.
It has, absolutely.
Yeah. Like
absolutely.
when we first got married.
Would you say that that is a sin that was something that you would utilize to get away from our like emotional intimacy, because you would lean on that or something
Absolutely.
like that?
It was just a barrier between us, because it was something else I was using to like put a Band-Aid on another problem in my life, which looking back, it was that I had no real connection to the Lord. I love the Lord, and I had a desire to seek after him, but I wasn't fulfilled by him. I was allowing the things in the world to fulfill me. And so that was definitely one of the things that kind of stuck out in my mind.
You modeled behavior.
Oh,
that
absolutely. I would copy everybody's everything. I didn't know who I was.
But it was more than that. You watched your mom and other people, women around you do similar types of things, right?
So, you know, my mom is more into, I guess, you know, just big shoppers. I think both of our parents or moms are shoppers. So that was always in my life. And it was just really, the root of it was that I had zero like contentment with the Lord. I just was wanting other things to fulfill me. I wanted things to fulfill me. And I would look at everybody around me and what they had, and I think, oh man, that must be better. Like if I had that bag, I feel like I would be happier. Or I remember when we first got married, I changed like my style in our home, probably in that Las Vegas house, probably like 5 times. You know,
and
because
to be fair though, I still think you change things a lot now, but it's the motivation and the heart behind it.
Right. And I still shop now. I'm not saying shopping is bad. Design isn't bad. And I do get that question a lot, or I used to more online, because people, I think you just assume things. You assume that, well, a lot of times women, I feel like this online, and I would say this to Dino, that women tend to project their own convictions on other women online. You know, so whatever they're like convicted about, they call it out in the name of Jesus, or in the name out of love, but it's not really loving, and it's not in the name of Jesus. You can tell it's just like judgmental, and I can see, like, I know myself now, and I can say, well, what they're saying, it doesn't make sense. It's not the same for me, you know, whatever they're pointing out.
They see a speck in yours and they have a plank in their own.
Exactly. And it's from a stranger that I don't know. So let me tell you, if like somebody close to me that I've allowed to speak into my life is saying something like this, I'm listening with all ears open, you know, but a random person online. So the whole point of that is that I was looking for my identity in other people and all the things. And that needed to go away too, for you and I to be close, and for you and I to connect as deeply as we are now, because it was just a barrier in between us.
Yeah. What was interesting is that I tried during that back in the daytime, there's a little Dino hot take. I tried back in the day to be like, hey, this is a problem. You need to fix this. I don't like this, that kind of thing. And eventually, in a similar fashion to how you basically stopped, that was me nagging, right? It's like, hey, you know, blah, blah, blah. In a similar way to what because you did the same to me. You're like, hey, you need to start doing these things. And I was like, yeah, right? Ugh. Eventually I stopped and just kind of let you do your own thing. And then I just kind of like prayed, asked the Lord to do something that, like, you know, in your heart, be like, hey, I would love for her to find fulfillment outside of this. And I don't mind that she like enjoys this, but I just would prefer for it to not be something that's a need or an outlet or something she runs to, you know? And I definitely want to encourage everybody, like, that should be everybody's knee-jerk reaction. And I'm even speaking to myself, very much speaking to myself right now. My knee-jerk reaction when I have issue with something going on in our marriage, or a relational thing, or something I see in you that I would love to see like modified, my first instinct should always be to run to the Lord and just ask him, give me clarity on the scenario. And then past that, Father, I just pray that you'll work in this area with my wife, bring her past it, level her up beyond it. So,
I mean, absolutely. We both know that, like, how powerful that is, because God has totally changed who we are.
Absolutely.
I mean, completely who we are.
Absolutely.
Because of prayer.
And still does. I feel like you've been married to probably 10 different men, 10 Dinos, you know, 10 different variations of me.
I don't hate it.
You kind of like the schizophrenic, it keeps you spicy, right?
Yeah. But going back to the materialism thing, that it's just that sort of stuff that I was thinking about, that it's not like the in your face sins that it's like, oh, well, it's lying and it's, you know, I'm not like hurting anybody, so it's fine, you know, and I'm generally happy, and you know, I'm busy. But then I started thinking about that, even that aspect of things, and what other things that I've had to work through, and how when I've been able to work through those things and get that sin out of my life, that, oh, it actually is, it's a sin and it's yucky and I don't want it, like busyness and allowing which, when I really think about it, it's more like a selfishness too, to me, just being selfish, putting the things that I'm doing and as the number one priority, and anything else that comes in between is just an irritation and a bother and a fly and that I just want to swat away, including you or the kids, you know? And it's awful when I think about it now, but it was just a part of who I was for so long. Was
there any events or anything like that took place that caused you to be like, all right, now this is going to be brought to light?
Well, I know for the materialism thing, when we moved into the trailer, I was stripped away of all materialistic things because I had no room. I had a closet, 18 inches wide maybe, and that was all the clothes we could have. We had no room. We had one of everything, one towel, one spoon for every person. And so because we had to strip things away, once it was stripped away, I went through like a grieving process. I remember I was just like, what is happening? What are we doing with our lives?
They also call that detoxing.
Detoxing. Exactly. And then I was just like free. At that point, I was free from everything that was holding me down. And then that changed my mentality.
Because you couldn't.
I was able to just free myself from it.
All right, so here's another little fun hot take out of this. Do you think that any aspect of that sin still rears its head and causes a pull on you now, or no?
I think that the material things are still there and they're just fun. That's it. But the underlying issue that I had is not there anymore. Oh. Do you think that?
I think that it rears its head in a different way. What I've seen is like, if there's something going on, I'm just going to go, like, say we're having some sort of like issue back and forth. Yeah. You'll go and seclude yourself and go and like work at the Merc.
I feel like a lot of times you and I can just discuss and we can move on. And then there's some times like this was a layered thing. And this was it used to be a very big argument for us for years. And then it's moved more as we've grown and worked through things. It's become more of just a discussion and we're able to talk about it. And so it's not like it was just like this, oh, you left your socks on the counter sort of thing. It was a very layered thing. And I had to just figure out how I was feeling for a second and then how I wanted to present myself to you. I think that I was just trying to process it and, because I didn't want to get into an argument. Yeah. And so I needed to figure out how to process it. But typically I don't really love doing that. And I obviously didn't love being disconnected for a day or two. So skip that next time. but
delightful.
But not trying to change the subject. But you did just remind me of some other things that I think are really easy for women to fall into. And again, men fall into this just as easily. But women are very, very skilled in being passive aggressive. Been there, done that. Manipulative. And I think that those are the sorts of things that us as women, we got to cut out. Like those things are just toxic and they're so negative for our marriage and for our spouse. Our goal is to build each other up and for me to be an advocate, to be me being your number one fan. And so any of those things, manipulating, passive aggressive, cutting you down is obviously not beneficial for our marriage and not going to grow us closer.
Absolutely. And
I think that it feels good at the moment. We feel like we're on top and we feel powerful, like, oh, I got him where it hurts, you know? But that's not the way we want to be.
No. I think you and I could almost do a whole podcast on like the proper ways of communicating. And because
we do have that on the list.
It is on the list? Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. Because I think that these aren't even like women specific sins. They're definitely on my agenda as well. Like I will consciously or subconsciously manipulate you, use passive aggressive behavior or things like that to, instead of just directly having a conversation with you about something and unpacking it, I will basically bite you, be bitey with you or withhold certain things from you that I know that you want or not act in a way that I know that I should because I'm like trying to prove a point or something like that. So I think that all those things are universal.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, so I think it's good. I mean, we've gone over a good chunk of the main things that are, that we've the most common guy stuff, the most common girl stuff. What do you feel like right now is some of the things that you intentionally are doing or can be doing for your and my relationship that like builds intimacy between the two of us?
Yeah, I would say there's lots of things. Being honest with one another, and we're going to talk about that. Communicating, which I know we said we were going to talk about too. Yeah. Communication is huge.
I think one of the big ones is like a lot of people, they will not actually unpack things themselves. So much so that they can't even articulate to their spouse. And if I'm being honest, that was kind of the scenario you and I were in the last few days. It's like, hey, you need to kind of like communicate what's going on.
Well, it wasn't until I didn't say anything until I actually had a second to think about it and be like, why did I feel this way? Or why do I feel closed off right now? What are the things that have led me to this spot? And once I was able to kind of run through it, I thought, that seems about right. So then I was able to communicate it. But actually, so setting aside a second to, pray, ask God to reveal the sin, reveal, what he wants, what's going on inside, and then how can I communicate that to my husband?
I think also on that note, it's good to understand yourself and how you process things. I process by, these are all my thoughts, this is everything that's going on. Some of these things I think I actually do believe, and some of them are just like thoughts that are in my mind. And I'm a very like verbal processor.
Which is good and also could be bad in some people's marriages. Because if you just say hurtful things.
Oh, no, absolutely. Obviously, you should like make sure you're being filtered and like don't be stupid. But on your side, I've found that you actually do most of your like mental processing by like writing. And like kind of being in a place where you can allow your brain to like unpack some of these things, you know? Yeah. So I think it's important that
understanding your spouse and how they process things
and yourself,
and how they can communicate things, and then not taking offense to it, you know, giving them a second and space, understanding each other's differences, and then allowing for there to be some space to get to a point where you can communicate. Because communication is, you and I can communicate, we don't have any barriers.
Totally. And there was obviously like, and it's interesting to continue to go back to this like conversation you and I have had the last few days. I knew something was off in you. Hey, what's going on? You're like, everything's fine. And I'm like, it's not. And I know that it's not, but you don't know that it's not. I just have to wait and allow your brain to eventually like process through this. And then eventually, like yesterday, you're like, this is kind of like the thought process. And it was interesting. After you like said all that to me, you're like, so are you mad? I'm ecstatic right now. I just needed to know. I just want it in your mind. Like, let me in. And I think like that is the goal. If I can push it, the goal is to be inside each other's minds, to allow the other person fully into your mind.
That's like such freedom.
It is. Not having to like keep track of lies, not having to keep track of how you actually feel versus like what you're saying you're feeling. There's a huge amount of intimacy that you gain from your spouse by just removing the barriers and being like very honest with them.
Absolutely.
And a good chunk of that means you have to actually be honest with yourself. Do I feel this way? Oof, I shouldn't. Therefore, what do I got to do to actually like fix this so that I can like be then honest with my spouse?
Yeah. Right? So that goes back to the removing the sin from your life. I'm like, I'm fine. And that's how a lot of people go through marriages. I'm fine.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And then they never open up and they never process whatever they're irritated about themselves. So they're never able to communicate that to their spouse, which then you now have a huge barrier. And you do that for, I can't even imagine. I mean, this was a day.
Yeah.
And I didn't like it. And I'm so glad it was done.
Yeah.
But like that months and years of that buildup, you gotta release that for sure.
I mean, like
you're missing out on the depth of intimacy.
Absolutely. How intimate can I really be with you if I'm constantly in a lustful state after like a girl in the gym and I'm like looking at this girl at the gym and I'm not, or I'm into pornography or something like that? Like, how honest can I really be? How vulnerable can I really be with you? Because when I'm talking with you, I know there's a lie. I know there's something that I'm holding back. I know that there's other thing in my mind that I've been like having an outlet on, right? That is the worst. If you really, really, really want to be super close and intimate with your spouse, get rid of the junk. So we did 2 whole podcasts on like clearing out the crap, and I think it's really important.
I think we could keep talking.
Probably could. It's no fun though. Let's get to the more fun stuff. All right, thank you guys so much for coming and listening. We drop new episodes every
Friday at 9 a.m.
9 a.m. Thank you.
You couldn't do it yourself?
No, I didn't know the day at the time. I would work here. I don't know what I'm doing.
All right, we'll see you guys next week.
Bye.